Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our Spirit of the Time Zoomcast here on Friday, October 20th. We are so excited to journey through the fascinating career of George Scribner. So stay tuned. We will get started right at the top of the hour. For those of you just joining us, welcome to this Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. We're so excited to fly with George Scribner today. We will get started right at the top of the hour. Again, thank you all for joining us today. We're so excited to fly with George, and we will get started right at the top of the hour. Welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, Studio Director. Time travel is the ultimate immersive experience. Trendy tech like voice recognition and projection mapping pale in comparison of the notion of sailing across the seas of time and space and reliving history or exploring the fascinating world of tomorrow. Here in the Zeitgeist Creative Studio, imagination rules and time is always of the essence. This is where immersion artists Ryan Harmon and Joanne Cicero study the past and spin the present envisioning the future of location-based entertainment, or what we like to call UXIRL, user experiences in real life. Now in its third year, the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we move you without a ride system, inviting one incredibly talented and influential colleague aboard our time machine. We set the controls for milestone moments in that person's career and attempt to unravel the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. And because we're live, you can type questions into the chat box and our passenger will answer them after the hour-long journey. Climbing aboard our time machine today is consulting Disney Imagineer, former Disney animator, and celebrated fine artist, George Scribner. Born in Panama, artist, director, and animator George Scribner directed Disney's beloved Oliver and Company and Mickey Mouse himself in The Prince and the Pauper. As a Disney Imagineer, George oversaw Mickey's PhilharMagic, the Magic Lamp Theater at Tokyo Disney Sea, and the updated Mexico Pavilion at Epcot starring the three Caballeros. More recently, George spent 9 years creating 45 paintings that document the expansion of the Panama Canal. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer, Ryan Harmon, and a Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Joe Lancicero, along with the man who can claim he hugged comedian Steve Martin's legs, George Scribner.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Ryan, are you there? Here we are. Whoa.
Oh, man, how cool to be there for the opening of the Japan Pavilion at Epcot. That was so awesome.
Good years. 1982, we set the controls for. So here we are at Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
It was so cool. Finally, 82, they finally get good sushi in Central Florida.
Finally.
It's about time.
And teppanyaki. But then, because of today, anticipating meeting with George, we went back to September 30th of 2003, 20 years ago in 2 weeks, to see the opening of Mickey's PhilharMagic.
With the largest 3D screen at the time, 150 feet. It was amazing. And we have to thank our friend George Scribner for all his incredible contributions to that and so many other things. And we've got lots to cover today, so let's jump right into it.
Let's jump in. George, we know Becky told us you were born in Panama, but let's set the controls. I think we're going to Barbados, and we're on a porch, and I think that's your grandmother with an easel painting, and your kid. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, my dad was from New York. He worked for Warner Brothers and was transferred to Panama to distribute films. Long story short, ended up being transferred to Trinidad, met my mother, who was Trinidadian. They were married there. So we had this connection to the West Indies, who my grandmother painted. She lived in Barbados. And as a kid, we would go and visit them. And I was always like, wow, this is amazing. She had all her paints out in this hideous turpentine that just reeked. It was unbelievable. So yeah, that was kind of like, that's the connection to the West Indies. That's kind of how my dad ended up there.
Wow. And would you say that inspired you? I'm sorry, Joe.
No, I was going to ask the same thing, Ryan. That's
okay.
Yeah, I think in some small way, there was always paint in our house. My mother painted, my father would doodle. And, you know, when you're surrounded, or I was surrounded by having all these materials, I started to pick them up and play with them. I always drew as a kid. And I would draw like local scenes, like iguanas or ships, or some like typical guy stuff, like these hideous iguanas. And it just, like most of the animators that I ended up working with later on, we all just started doodling when we shouldn't have been doodling, in school. Like, we shouldn't be doodling.
We mentioned the other day how many textbooks were ruined by animators because we had flip books in the corner of the textbook.
There's thousands of books in landfills with little thumbnails in them that you could like scroll through and roll through.
Oh, because you made little flip books.
Yeah, you just drew all over things you weren't supposed to draw on.
Oh, that's awesome. So 1968, you got sent to Florida for high school. Tell us about that and what you did in high school.
Yeah, I went to schools in the former Canal Zone. I was a bad boy. I was a very bad boy. And my parents suggested maybe it'd be a good idea if you, went away to school in your high school. So I ended up at a high school in Florida. It was a boys' school. It had been a military school, and about a year before they made it a preparatory school. And highly, since I was a bad boy, it was actually the making of me, because I met two people who became my mentors on the fine art side and on the theater and sort of directing side.
Yeah.
One was a woman in an art class, and another one was a Spaniard who ran the drama department. I got into theater. So it was, and to this day, my career is really connected with what the two of them taught me or gave me the confidence to believe in myself. I owe them both a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, were you
And
involved
George-
in? Sorry, go ahead, Joe. You're trying.
And George, did you, so this kind of split love of
Right. Yeah.
art and theater, did it just kind of come about, or was, did you said earlier, of course, like all the animators, you love to draw, but where did the love for theater come from?
My father acted, like in small plays and stuff. When he was in the army, he was in the theater. My grandfather, Sam Scribner, actually ran a series of vaudeville theaters. He built a large structure on 7th and 42nd. So this kind of, that theater background, there's a little vaudeville in me, I guess. It sort of runs through this as well. So there was this on my mother's side, the drawing side, and on my father's side, I guess the theater side. And I had the luck to meet two people who, when you're that age, 13, 14, I'm the worst. I have no confidence. I hate myself. And I was told, you're good. You have a lot of promise to do this. And it meant at that age, wow, it made all the difference in the world. And I encourage, and I do it now when I go to Panama, I will draw for students and, encourage them as much as possible, remembering what it did for me at that age.
Right. And as we were talking the other day, George, you were talking about the what is the common thread between the theater and the art, and that is,
Yeah, I think all the arts share a lot of the same principles. You have to know what it is that you're setting out to say, whether you're making a film or you're doing a painting. A painting has a focal point, a center of interest. So does a play, so does a film, so does a book. It has a hero, strong supporting characters. The arts are funny. They really kind of relate in more ways than one. The same principles apply. The same thing, the same thinking goes into it. If I start a painting, I have to know why I want to do this painting. When we started Lion King, why are we making this film? What is the story about? We would keep a post-it note, oh yeah, on the screen. This movie is about a young Lion King grows up in Africa. You get in the middle of a movie, as you know, and why did we set out to do this movie? Oh, I forgot. Oh yeah, right. There it is.
Oh. So, Joe, where did you go to college, George?
I ended up at Emerson College, first Boston University, and then Emerson College in Boston to major in film. I had a friend of mine who was there, and I wanted to major in film. He goes, hey, you can get equipment. It's kind of a big deal being able to get equipment to go out and shoot. Right. And that was a great experience. And I ended up more sort of gravitating towards the editing side of film. I found you probably had the most control over the film. You could take the same amount of footage, same footage, and completely make a completely different narrative out of it. I just love the business of editing versus going out and doing the shoots and stuff. The post side was way more interesting to me.
Is this a shot when you were in the Grateful Dead?
Yeah, you like that? Yeah. I had
that's the 1970s.
Yeah, like that beard. It looks like a chia pet. I just sprayed water on my face. And
nice.
Hideous beard.
Very
Let
cool.
me Photoshop that and send that back to you.
Very good.
So you were directing plays at this time too, right? In college and then back in Panama?
Yeah, it started in 1970. I had a chance to direct a play at a local theater in the former Panama Canal zone. A group of us did a play, and I really liked this. I feel very comfortable directing. And for the next 5 summers,
it looks like you took it.
Go to school, come back. This is me. I'm working on. This is Play It Again, Sam. That's the lead I'm working with here. And every summer I would go back to Panama and direct a play at this theater. And we did like I said, 5 every summer and loved doing it. So I think that prepared me. So when I got to Disney, I had that experience or comfort level working with actors, working on getting people to make their marks, understanding the text, finding out what the subtext is. I learned a lot from doing the theater.
Yeah. So 1974, you want to do that one, Joe?
No, go for it.
Well, 1974, it looks like you are moving back to Panama. And you've graduated, you've got all this experience, and now you're working in TV spots and commercials.
I went back to Panama after Emerson, spent a year doing commercial work. Again, mostly on the editorial side. At the time, it was flatbeds. We're all 16, some 35. And we did commercials. They were really crazy. We'd get like Burger King, Burger King, Burger King. Get the product shot from New York and then cut everything else around it. And sometimes the negatives didn't line up. Like, wait a minute, the color temperature, what? We'd make it work. But it was McDonald's. Vamos a comer McDonald's. Ay, qué bueno. It was, again, I took the attitude, no matter what job I had, I was going to learn something from it. And I did. I had a kind of a reasonably open mind. And that experience of working in editorial, working in film, it helped my composition sense when I went to do paintings later. It helped me as a director compose shots, because you're working in film, you're working at a certain aspect ratio. These all relate.
Yeah. And tell us how you became bilingual so easily.
Sorry, say it again.
How did you become bilingual so well, so fluent in both languages?
You know, my brothers and I, we all grew up in Panama City, and just all our friends were a mix of Americans and Panamanians. The funny thing was, all these Americans, I'm probably going to get arrested for this, but all the Americans, there are a lot of them, you know, they ended up working for this company and that company. Wait a minute, years later, oh, they were with the CIA. Oh, who knew?
Oh.
Anyway, so I grew up, all my friends, including Ruben Blades, the salsa singer, he was a friend of my brother's, and I, we just, when you're surrounded by it, I was talking about it earlier, these people have facilities for languages. I think Monica, Joe's wife, speaks like 18,000 languages. You just, when you're young, you have this ability to absorb, and you pick up languages very quickly. And so we did.
Yeah, that's great. Joe, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I'm an American. They say, how do you know, with someone that's bilingual, what do you call someone that's one language? American.
Yeah.
Even though I'm talking to you here from Madrid, but as George just said, I got this lovely wife who speaks the language so well. I don't have to. I don't know much about it, but I should.
Yeah, and I've used Spanish. I've used Spanish a lot. I use it. I live in Los Angeles. I use it. I've used it in France. I've used it in traveling. And if someone doesn't understand English, we can do a mix of both. So it's been very handy.
So George, 1976. Go ahead, Joe.
Here you go.
Oh, 1976. You're reading a filmmaker's newsletter. And is there some ad in there or something you saw?
Yeah, I was working at this production house, MC Films, and there was an article, and I just happened to pick it up. There was an article in a magazine called Filmmaker's Newsletter, which at the time was a fairly high-end, very sophisticated film magazine. With all the rising stars, Scorsese, and all these people who were coming up in the early 70s. And there was an article in there that Disney was looking for artists to become animators. The first generation of animators with Walt were retiring. Ford and Ollie Johnson and something, and they were looking to train young people. So I was like, wow, I don't know, it was one of those moments wow, the harp's going on. Man, maybe this is something I could do. I can act, I can draw. Animation at the time was you draw on paper. This is like acting on paper. I really love performances, love working with characters and getting performances out of actors. And I wanted to move back to the States. At the time, if you wanted to be in the arts, you really had to be really in the States. And at the time, animation was pretty much in Los Angeles, some work in New York. But so I moved to Los Angeles. Before that, I sent Disney a portfolio. And I had got a nice note from them saying, look, what we're looking for is the human figure, loose gesture, in motion, like a verb. It's doing something.
Right.
And of course, I completely misunderstood it. And I sent them paintings of Joaquin, this violinist that Brahms wrote a violin concerto for, and a drawing of Bjorn Borg. I don't even know what I was thinking. I got a nice note back about a month later. If you ever write us again, we'll call security. No, I'm kidding. Do not write us again, please. They were very encouraging. This shows a lot of promise. However, you've missed the mark. I think I shellacked the letter and had it framed over my bed for about a year.
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what? I'm ready for a change. I'm going. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened, not getting into Disney, because I ended up working at all these other studios, starting out as an ink and painter, which was great fun because I was so well fed by all these other women. It was mostly women at the time.
Yeah.
I weighed like 85 pounds and they'd bring in all this food. Anyway, I worked at all these studios, just working my way up. Hanna-Barbera, Chuck Jones, etc.
Wow.
No,
So
it was funny when we were doing a little pre-interview, George. We found out that we were actually working at some of the same studios at the same time and didn't know. I spent a summer working at Ralph Bakshi on the Lord of the Rings, and you were there as well. We probably our paths probably crossed.
It's true. It was the only work in Los Angeles, and I mean, I was super grateful to work for Ralph Bakshi. He was doing Lord of the Rings. Man, I could make enough money to get tires for my VW. This is awesome. Wow. Oh my God, look at all this overtime. Hey, I learned a ton working at all these other studios. We were talking about it before that I think what it did is it prepared me. Once I got into Disney, I'd learned how to organize my time, how to be efficient, to understand that it's a business, that you have to do both. You have to be able to be very creative and provide really extraordinary like performances, but you also need to be very mindful of, well, it's a profession. There's a reason it's called show business. That old Woody Allen gag. Anyway, yes, we'd work together, Joe. We'd like ships in the night.
Yeah, and George, you were very fortunate too. Some of us went straight to Disney, and of course, we got to work with some of the animators there. But when we were talking earlier, you were mentioning some of the animators that you got to work under. And yeah, these were some of the superstars in the industry: Ben Washam, Hal Ambro. I mean, if anybody's familiar with any of those names, they know that these are guys who did Bugs Bunny and some of the top animators, outside of Disney. So you were very fortunate in that regard as well.
And I was really fortunate to take advantage of it. I had said to you earlier that I had a painting teacher who had this expression that chance favors the prepared. I really liked it. And I felt like, wow, that really applied to kind of sort of milestones in my life where, because I'd done classes with this guy, Benny Washam, and had mentored under Hal Ambro and Hanna-Barbera on the feature unit, I was prepared for getting into Disney, because during all that time I was at those other studios, I kept submitting portfolios to Disney, just getting it better and better. And finally got in 1983 as a character animator in Black Cauldron.
Yeah. Very cool. So you got to work at Disney, Black Cauldron, and then they moved you shortly into story.
Yeah, I met a guy named Pete Young who took me kind of under his wing. Again, there's a debt to so many people, including Benny and Hal and Pete and the woman who mentored me in high school. That I don't know. It's sort of a sub theme here, but I always took the attitude that there were better people than me, and I wanted to learn from them. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to work at Disney. And to this day, I will send my paintings. It's sort of a larger theme of, I'll send my work to this artist named Tom Gilliam. What's the matter with this painting? There's something wrong. A very brief little anecdote. I sent a painting of a ship in the canal. It was broadside, lateral. And he wrote back going, hey, do you know that water reflections drop vertically? They don't slant to the side like a shadow. Yeah, I knew that. I was testing you. I was just testing you.
Right.
I learned, you learn from better people. Anyway, yeah, I finally got in, worked on Black Cauldron, got into story with Pete. And around that time, the studio switch gears. Michael Eisner came in with Roy and Jeffrey Katzenberg, and they held a gong show, amongst a million other things. They were going to reorganize a lot of stuff, looking for ideas. And one of the ideas that Pete Young suggested was an animated version of Oliver Twist. And Jeffrey had always wanted to do this. Apparently, that was always in the back of his head. He wanted to do Oliver Twist in some medium. And wow, let's develop that. So I started developing that with Pete Young for about a year and a half. We spent just developing it.
And then how did you go from developing to ultimately directing?
I owe Roy Disney that thanks. He joined us for story meetings on Oliver and Company. Pete Young used to make drawings of Roy in the corner smoking incessantly. The room was just like a fog, like a London fog. And so Dodger runs across the bridge. You know, but he loved being part of the process. He was responsible for keeping animation at the studio. There was a lot of talk of, you know, let's fold a division. The vault is worth a ton of money. These properties alone, you can make. And Roy, to his credit, no, we're going to keep animation. He joined us. I guess he saw something in me and recommended I be made a director, and I became the first director on it, 1985, something like that. 1985.
Yeah. Wow.
And a cool first feature, because that's what I think when Jeffrey and Michael came in, you know, they were really the Hollywood guys, and they really wanted to, you know, make things contemporary. I think some of the previous Disney films maybe suffered from, they were still trying to figure out what Walt would do, and were a little tired in their casting and such. But damn, you got to work with Billy Joel and Bette Midler. I mean, that's what those guys. You know, these are the people that contemporary audiences wanted to see and hear.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. Jeffrey encouraged us, hey, think big. Go out and get the best people. I'll give you a quick story of how we cast Billy Joel. I mean, here I am. The last thing I directed was Norman, Is That You? This silly, crazy play in Panama. And now I'm directing Billy Joel. It's like, again, like harps, like Dinner with the President. Anyway, the music director on Oliver goes, hey, I know Billy. I think he'd be perfect for the role of Dodger, this kind of mischievous, you know, rascally character. Let's call him up. So we auditioned. I'm in Los Angeles in a car at 10 o'clock at night with a phone that looks like, I said to you earlier, like a wingtip shoe. It looks like, you know, like one of those army walkie-talkies at the time.
Yeah.
Billy Joel's in New York. Hey man, how's it going? I go, all right, we had sent him pages. He read Dodger. He's in New York, I'm in LA. And I read Oliver, and he was perfect for it. I just thought, wow, I just talked to Billy Joel. Oh my God.
Okay.
Anyway, he was perfect for the role. And when we actually did sessions with him, super, super nice guy, really forthcoming, funny, would play with material. It was great fun. I owe him a lot. It was great.
And you got to direct Cheech Marin in Espanol?
Sí, in Espanol. He came in, he auditioned. He was great. I said to him in Spanish, mira, Cheech, por favor. Sabroso, lindo, perfect, pero muy mexicano. You sound, this is more of a Puerto Rican character, this dog Tito, this crazy chihuahua. He goes, okay, man, okay, oh yeah, okay, it's all right, man. He goes away. We auditioned a couple other people. And Cheech, the agent goes, hey, Cheech wants to audition again. He came back 10 minutes later. He nailed it. He just was like, he had the accent, he had the rhythm, he had the, I'm like, what did he do? Where did he go for 10? Yeah. I go, Cheech, sabroso. He was perfect for the role. And we became really good friends. And actually, after Oliver, we started to develop a Cheech special, and a Cheeto special. It just never went anywhere, but he was great fun to work with. Bette, on the other hand, Bette Midler, very professional, but by the 5th session, and I understood her pain. She was like, when is this going to end?
Oh, wow.
You know, it was 2.5, 3 years of story changes, and we'd have to go back to the talent to get just additional dialogue. You know, we'd lay scratch down and then wait for the production. And I commiserated with her. I hope if she's listening, I'm sorry, Bette. I'm very sorry.
So the film comes out and it's super successful.
Yeah, it was pretty set at the time. It was the highest grossing animated film. Came out with The Land Before Time, came out at the same time. And yeah, at the time, yeah. And it's sort of set, you know, I give Jeffrey credit. He let us run with the film. And he once told me, as I mentioned to you guys, you know, we're going to make mistakes, but they're going to be ours.
Yeah.
Just go for it. You know what? You have an idea, just go for it. And it came out great. I moved from there to Prince and the Pauper, a Mickey featurette. Just great fun.
Which is pretty awesome. But when had been the last Mickey Mouse film? I mean, it had been a while, right?
I think it was a Christmas. What is it? Christmas? The Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol that Bernie Mattinson had directed.
Oh, wow.
I think that was the last featurette, fairly substantial, you know, rather than a short, or even maybe a short. Now that I think about it, Joe. Right. It's the first time he'd been like touched. And I remember saying to you guys, I was like, really, do I want to do a featurette with Mickey? And I'm hearing rumblings that Lion King is in development. I'm already primed for, man, I would love to work on that film. Wasn't ready. Look, just put this up on reels. Just, you don't have to direct it all the way through. Just get it up on storyboard. It's a storyboard, with effects and music. So. But there was one page where Mickey Mouse, a shorts character, is at the bedside of the king who passes away. It's off screen. We staged it so we stayed on Mickey, but off screen, a candle goes out. It's been done a million times. And I was like, wow, can we pull this off with a shorts character? And we did. I thought we did. It had to be handled gingerly, carefully. It's what attracted me to the script. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. We pushed this a little bit. And so again, another experience. I learned a lot from it. And directing Mickey, I mean, who gets to direct Mickey? This is awesome.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. So around 1991, Aladdin's in production, all this stuff's going on, but you start to feel like Imagineering's apparently calling you by this point.
Yeah, I worked on Lion King. I was the first director on it. I went from Prince and the Pauper. I wanted to work on Lion King because I thought, here I am, I'm from Panama. I have a feel for, how would you put it, local music, indigenous music. We had gone to Africa. I thought we could cast it with African actors, use African music, Johnny Clegg, Lady Smith, Black Mambazo. And I spent about a year on it, and I was taken off of the film, and I understood it. The studio wanted to go a different direction, and around that time, I moved off of the film. It turned out great. I understood completely. It's a business. These things, you just have to go with it. And moved to Imagineering at that point and started working. It was fun. I had done all these shorts for Imagineering during breaks, hiatuses between the pictures, and started to meet some of the crew. A lot of people, Joe, Tom Fitzgerald, sure. Some of the writers, and liked the vibe, and was given the opportunity to direct animated projects for a couple big parks that were being developed. Tokyo Disney Seas and California Adventure. It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I ended up really, really liking it a lot. I enjoyed the time there a lot because Joe and I were talking about this. Every project was completely different. It was a different discipline.
Yeah.
You worked on 5 or 6 things at once. So you were constantly juggling, but I found it kept my mind fresh and like, oh, the problem here solves the issue here versus a feature, which was 4 or 5 years of slogging through one idea for one movie.
Wow.
It was a lot of work. The Imagineering experience was terrific.
But you still had time around mid-90s to work on Fantasia 2000?
Yes. That was one of the projects I was on before I went to Imagineering. I worked on the last sequence, the Pomp and Circumstance sequence, the Elgar piece. And it was Donald Duck he was going to present crowns to the babies of our princes and princesses. It was all very complete, just really, this is almost incestuous. Can we please work on something else? This is but I made the best of it, like everything else. You get in there and you do the very best you can.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
This is from Mickey's PhilharMagic, some early boards that I did for it.
Okay. So before we jump to Mickey's PhilharMagic, tell us about at WDI. When I was there was Peggy Van Pelt, and there were all these classes and ways to improve your skills. And apparently there was an art teacher named Steve Houston that you connected with.
Yeah, when I started Imagineering at nights, well, the studio, the company, the division would offer classes like, how would you put it, employee betterment classes, like just skill sets free of charge. And a painting teacher named Steve Houston started offering a painting class. And I was like, I painted, I'd drawn. It was like something in the back of my head, just give this a try. And I showed up with burnt sienna and white and maybe ultramarine blue. And that was about it. Like, okay, I guess I have a lot to learn. I guess this is where you start. And I ended up taking pretty much every class I could with this guy at lunchtime or at night. It was like an hour here, an hour here. And I thought, wow, I really, really like this. For one thing, no one gives me any notes. I really like this. This is awesome. I get to do what I want to do.
Right.
So concurrent as I'm working at Imagineering, directing all these projects, I'm taking these painting classes. I mean, it changed my life. It was awesome.
Wow. So 2001, Disney California Adventure is about to open, and tell us about what you did with Drawn to Animation.
Drawn Animation was, again, one of those projects that, because my background and Joe's was animation,
Yeah,
I helped set up. It was a large room. Guests came in, sat down with paper and a pad, and would draw our characters. And there would be an animator on stage in like an animator's office. So I helped art direct the office. No, the animators have a bunch of tchotchkes. They have like models. They have the MyBridge running photos. They have like pillows. Most of those offices are a mess, and they reflect the personality of the animator. So that was great fun, and that was really a lot of fun to work on because of the guest satisfaction that adults could walk away and they would tell us, "Wow, I never thought I could draw, but I made a drawing," and they'd hold up their drawing, and that's a cool feeling. Like I discovered something. It was
very empowering. Super.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I think part of the genius of what you guys did was you created a formula and a system, that made it easy for everybody. Little kids could do it, young adults, older people. Everybody was able to, follow that system that you guys created. I know because we later duplicated it in Hong Kong and elsewhere, but you guys did it first. And we did it in Tokyo as well, but incredibly empowering, because nobody, I'm not an artist, I can't draw, but you guys came up with this very simple system that allowed everybody. And in fact, we used that part of it when we did the animators palette for the cruise ships.
That's right. That's correct.
Basically the same thing, allowing people to, use their whatever skill level they had, and then they could, in that case, we created this animation that allowed their drawings to come to life. But still, going back, it all goes back to what you guys did, and it's real. I mean, that's something that people remember probably more than going on an e-ticket.
That's exactly right. Yeah. They walk away with that feeling of completion, like you say, like I can do this. I can do this. Yeah. You can't understate it. It's a powerful feeling, and we talked about the beauty of working at Imagineering was how you touch people's lives in ways you don't even anticipate as a creator. How the effect we have for good, for absolute good. Yeah, it was a challenge working out how's a simple way to draw, let's say, Goofy or one of the characters or Stitch. Like, yeah, it was worth it. It was actually well worth it. So that was Ryan. So amongst those, it was Mickey's PhilharMagic, Drawn Animation, all these other projects that.
Well, tell us about Mickey's PhilharMagic, because that was mind-blowing when that opened, and you got to work with Robin Williams and you learned digital. Tell us a little bit about that process.
I mean, that broke ground in so many different ways. Like we mentioned, the largest screen. I mean, you guys flew out this giant proscenium. I mean, it was really state of the art at the time, and still is. It's still a fantastic show today.
It still is. And the idea of it was, well, let me back up for a second. It was going to be a 10-minute 3D or 4D movie. The 4D meaning there would be effects in the theater. You'd get sprayed or smells and the parks and Imagineering wanted a 3D film that would be accessible and friendly to all ages. So it wouldn't scare you. It wouldn't have all these, flinch moments of glass shattering coming at you, but it would be much more gentle and charming, and the idea was Donald Duck would meet all these characters from our second golden age of animation. He'd interact with them. It was a crazy premise. Like, how are we going to put Donald with Belle? We figured it out, and it turned out to be a very fun little movie. We actually built the theater I mentioned to you earlier in Van Nuys here in Los Angeles, the entire footprint with the correct amount of projectors to test the 3D animation. So we would know when we got to Florida, everything was working. The stereo, the glasses, and everything was working. So it was really it was a 3-year project. It was a great project to work on.
George, was it the first time you were doing some of the traditional 2D characters in 3D?
That's correct. It was the first time the traditional analog, for like Lumiere and Bell and Ariel, were going to be done digitally. And to our great fortune, the leads, Glenn Keane, I forget the other names. I'm sorry. Some of the leads were still at Feature Animation, and they ended up supervising, including Eric Goldberg, the principals. The principals like Ariel was Glenn's work. So we had the advantage of, wow, they helped sort of shepherd that transition. How do we make these characters, which you cheat a lot in 2D, you start moving a character dimensionally. As we all know, it's very tricky. All these cheats you can get away with. And we managed to pull it off because we had great leads with the tech group, so that they drove these performances. I did all the boards. I roughed everything out. And then I directed the animator. And this is what we're looking for. And then the animator worked with the actual digital animators. It was very, Ariel was probably the hardest to do. Her hair was probably the most difficult thing to do. How to get this weave, this vast amount of, I mean, just this volume to feel as if it had the weight and texture of hair. Wow. It's the trickiest.
They have the same problem, I believe, with the animatronic Ariel in The Little Mermaid Dark Ride.
Yeah, they probably would. It'd probably be the same issue, actually.
Yeah. So tell us about Magic Lamp Theater, success of Aladdin, and this is at Tokyo Disney Sea.
Yeah,
the big three that I worked on was Mickey's PhilharMagic, including a lot of other small shorts. Mickey's PhilharMagic, the Mexico Pavilion redo with the three Caballeros, and Magic Lamp Theater, which was the genie on a screen interacting with a live magician on stage. So the magician's set went up 10 feet. And from that point on, it was a screen masked as if it was the ceiling or the back of the wall. And the genie appears in Japanese. So that was great fun to storyboard because, Joe, as you know, I thought, oh, I have a really funny gag for this. I'm just gonna make this quick, but I have really funny. Sumo wrestlers are gonna bounce. Genie sumo wrestlers will bounce our little kid. There was a little kid in the show. But I thought, oh, this is hilarious. Well, I went to pitch it, and I'm like, oh, this is really funny. And then these sumo wrestlers, I'm standing at a storyboard and I'm walking down the sketches, and I turn around, and all these Japanese executives are like, who knew? I thought it was funny. There was an entire cultural translation filter that had to be done, and what we thought was funny might be an offensive gag. You just didn't know. So Imagineering, to their credit, always has, like a local writer, as you guys know, someone, what, that's bad luck, that's in poor taste.
Right.
Why didn't someone tell me? I don't know, but I pitched it. So,
but what you guys did was fantastic, and it's still playing to this day.
Yeah,
that's great. That's great.
Testament to the strength of a great story, and and the technology. I mean, guys, we're pushing things. The whole idea of having a live magician actor interacting with the animation.
Yeah.
Remember,
and think of animating the genie, which was this elastic, shape-shifting form. Now it's got to be done digitally. That was really, I give Eric Goldberg a lot of credit. He worked with the animators and made this work. Wow. I would stand over his shoulder and listen to him give notes, and I was like, it's a good thing I got out of animation. I'm just not that good. I'm a better director than I am an animator, that's for sure.
No false modesty. But,
but as you said earlier, go ahead.
No, but as you said earlier, I mean, all of us, we always stood on the shoulders of giants, and I think that both in animation and maybe even more so at Imagineering, because there were so many different technical disciplines involved in what we did. I was always in awe of, all these incredible technical people that, we would come up with the fun, crazy idea, but then, it was really all these brilliant minds that were able to take, in the case of Magic Lamp Theater or in
Or Joe, when I
PhilharMagic.
worked on the Mexico ride, this is the Three Caballeros Mexico ride, we had someone in there from hydraulics in the story meetings, because they'd go, the boat can only move at a certain speed, and sorry, you're gonna have to loop that scene earlier because the people behind you are gonna. Really? There's somebody from hydraulics on a story meeting? I guess so. This is awesome in a way. It's like, wow.
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
This is great.
That's great.
So George,
You guys
2005.
did a great job with the Mexico Pavilion, because I remember you had to move like from screen to screen, to your point about, having to time it with the boat. I know there were scenes like where Mickey and the three Caballeros had to move along with you, which was pretty challenging, I'm sure.
It was very challenging. We had to actually build a mock-up. You're aware of this, that the executives could walk through. So we put monitors up on stands, and they walked through the ride to make sure that they weren't seeing what should have been looped before. And it was a tricky one. Again, I storyboarded it and then built it in After Effects, so we knew exactly where the loop points would be. It was great fun. We shot it in Mexico. I directed in Spanish.
Wow.
That was great fun. Oh boy, yelling at the crew as he's floating down a boat. No, para, no, todavía, no. Go back up.
Okay. So Disneyland celebrated its 50th birthday in 2005, and you were invited to direct the official film, the first 50 magical years. Tell us about that, George.
The park was celebrating, like you say, its 50th anniversary. Imagineering reached out to Steve Martin, who had worked at the park as a teenager in the magic shop. He agreed. Great. I storyboarded the whole thing. We were going to shoot Steve on a stage and then comp in. The storyline was that Donald Duck thinks he would make a better host for this event, for this 50th thing. And he's all pissed off. Like, hey, I'd make it better. And Steve has to kind of put up with them. They obviously bicker throughout the entire short. It's about 10 minutes. At the very end, they make up. So Jerry Reese directed Steve on the stage. I wore a green suit. There might be a picture. I hope there is. There might be a picture. For the part of Donald Duck. So Steve would have someone to read lines against as he was, there I am. Wow, what a physique. Anyway, I made a joke to you guys last time. If I ever run for political office and someone wants to defeat me, all they have to do is find this image.
You don't know that's you, though.
I know, those ears are still sticking up on the sides. So at the last scene here, Donald Duck in the film hugs Steve Martin's legs. They make up, they kiss and make up. So I'm down on my knees here. And I look up at Steve. I go, Steve, I'm going to hug your legs. I'm going to hug your legs. And he goes, all right, go away, do it. So I got to hug Steve Martin's legs. I mean, who gets that chance? So, hey, if I was famous before, even more famoso after hugging Steve. He was a great sport.
Wow. So 2006, being from Panama, I guess they talked about the expansion of the Panama Canal, and tell us how you got involved in this amazing project.
We were, like, all the time I was an Imagineer, I was painting and painting and painting. My wife and I were on a trip to Panama in the administration building of the canal zones on the Pacific side, and in the center there's a rotunda with these enormous murals that had been done for the first canal. They're enormous, depicting scenes of the construction. And my wife goes, hey, you should do this for the expansion that's coming up, the Panama Canal expansion. They were going to widen it for larger ship traffic. I thought, man, why didn't I think of that? But that's really a good idea. So I sent a letter to the consulate. I put a package together to the embassy in DC and then the Los Angeles consulate. Hi, I'm a god. I'm from Disney. I'm Walt's illegitimate son. I'm kidding. But I go, look, this is my background. I'm also Panamanian because I have dual citizenship, being born in Panama. And here's samples of my work, including scenes I'd already painted of the canal. It was a subject that fascinated me. Well, they wrote, I heard right away in a couple of weeks, we're interested. When are you in Panama next? We'd like to talk to you. And Great. And on my next trip, I went down, we made arrangements. So for the next 9 years, I painted scenes of the construction from the first, mostly excavation work. They were using a lot of dynamite, and this is on the Atlantic side, facing the Caribbean. And I would do small studies and then do the finished paintings in Los Angeles. Take a lot of photographs, reference, and then, like I said, do the work, the final work in Los Angeles, and ending up with about 45 paintings over 9 years, like five 1 year, 4 years, and it would just track the schedule of the construction. So it started with dry excavation, went to the channels, widening the channels, and then finally the set of locks, large set of locks on both sides of the isthmus, and that was the final work. This is a scene at night. The work was 24/7. I think towards the last couple of years, it pretty much worked.
Wow.
And George, I have to say, it's truly a testament to your, I think, everything you've been talking about, everything you learned about staging, about lighting, because when you think of the subject matter, you know, heavy machinery and moving dirt, and you were able to make it beautiful and romantic. And I think that's true, you know, having that eye for staging, you know, where to put the camera, you know, how, you know, looking for the lighting. And I'm sure in many cases you had to change the lighting or work with it. But I remember seeing the first couple of your paintings and just go, oh my God, that is kind of like the most boring subject matter. And he's made it interesting and in some ways romantic, very romantic.
Yeah.
I know. I had a friend of mine who goes, "What? How do you do this? You take a dump truck and you make it painted? Are you sick? Do you?" A friend of mine, I don't know if you have the image. A friend of mine named Mark Monet, he coined a phrase. He goes, "You know what? I think I'm going to call you the Sultan of Steel." Hey, I like that. I think that's pretty good. I ended up doing not only those paintings for the expansion, but scenes of the construction of Shanghai Disneyland. Because an executive, Bob Weiss, saw them, and I did pretty much the same thing for Shanghai. And then I spent a year on the cruise ships doing scenes of the construction of the ships. So that's me as the Sultan of Steel. This is from a friend of mine, Mark Monet. He ran it through an AI generator. What is it? Midjourney.
Midjourney, yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? I just like, wow. I like, man, I gotta use this for my bio now. Like, no, this is what I look like. Really. I put on a lot of weight. I've been taking a lot of steroids.
Oh, wow.
This is from Shanghai Disneyland. This is about a year. This is the castle about a year before it opened.
Wow.
It was one of my favorites. I love this feeling of it at rest. The construction had stopped for the day where they were on a break. And it was just this peaceful late afternoon golden hour shot of it. This is a trick in reducing detail, which is again another principle of the arts. You reduce the idea down to its essence. What can I take out? What do I absolutely have to have in here, and the rest can go. So if you saw the photograph, it'd be an entirely different. There's almost 50% more detail, particularly in the shadow areas and stuff. Anyway, this is a pretty good size painting. It's 30 inches by 40 inches. I was really proud of this. A little study I did before I started, just trying to nail down, okay, what's the palette? What kind of colors am I going to use for the skin tones? It was a great little exercise.
Now, George, did these get published anywhere? Now I know besides, you know, being displayed in various places, the Panama paintings, there's a wonderful book. I'm going to do a little plug here by our friend Dave Bossert, wrote a book about your incredible art and, you know, the experience that you had doing the paintings in Panama, and it's available at Old Mill Press. But what about the Shanghai paintings?
Sorry, what was your question about? Oh, if they collected these, there was talk of it, Joe. I don't know whatever happened to them. The paintings, I think the original paintings are here in Los Angeles at the ARL. There was talk of doing prints, and I don't know what became of that idea. I thought it would be sort of an interesting, maybe a little niche, but I thought it was interesting. Or you could do side by side construction, the finished, you know, today, something like that. Paintings of Disneyland. I also, for about 5 years, painted scenes of the parks here.
Wow.
The parks came to Imagineering asking Imagineers, would they be interested in painting scenes of the parks? And I volunteered myself, Larry Nicolai, a couple of I love doing this. It's great fun for them. Again, and this touches on something that we talked about last time, the effect that you as an artist have. A woman bought one of my paintings of Disneyland and told me later that for her, excuse me, going to Disneyland, I'm sorry, was a form of sanctuary, and that the painting, she'd had a very difficult childhood, and that the painting reminded her of the safety and comfort, I guess, she felt when she was at the park. You're like, wow, little thing I did at Walt, but you don't know this. I didn't know this doing these paintings, that it would have this kind of an effect. It's just amazing what you end up contributing without your knowledge, you know.
Yeah.
The trains at Disneyland are awesome. They're lovely to paint because they're so well art directed to begin with. The designs are beautiful.
And you're the Sultan of Steel, so
that's right. A little more respect from you guys, okay?
So 2009, George, I guess you left Imagineering officially, although you continued to consult. What did you start doing after that?
I worked as a consultant for Imagineering and ended up working for other companies as well, like Airbnb, and just doing sketches or gags or storyboards and stuff. I had the opportunity in 2010 to do an animation class in Uruguay, Montevideo, Uruguay. Wow. As an effort by CalArts. They were looking to improve their animation skills. A whole group of us, I was the first one, ended up going down and spending months training their artists. And I mentioned to you guys last time, that was the hardest work I ever did, was prepping those classes. Wow. Teachers are the most underpaid people on the planet. I never understood that. Everything is backwards. What they do and what they get back. This was a lot of work, just prepping these classes to get them so that they were interesting and entertaining. And so to this day, I've done both. I've ended up directing small projects, some like with other producers, or doing painting classes and commissions, painting commissions. This was in Panama. When I go, I'll always try and find, or I'll be invited to a school and we'll draw Mickey Mouse or draw the Disney characters. And, you know, there are people who help me, and maybe one of these kids ends up being an artist or finds some comfort, or I did growing up. The physical act of drawing, I felt relaxed. I felt like at peace for briefly. And so I try and give back when I go back to Panama. I do this as often as I can.
Yeah. And what do you foresee in the future for yourself? Are you retiring, or you have a great novel to write? You're gonna make your big animated film. What do you think you're gonna do?
I'm working on curing brain cancer, but that's just a side gig. Going kind of slow. It just isn't. It's tough. It's not a discipline I'm very comfortable with. But,
yeah.
You know, it's going to be more of the same. I'm going to keep teaching painting, and occasionally I'll get a call. Can you help us with storyboards? Or, you know, I'm a reasonably funny guy. It's pathetic to say that, but hey, can you make this more entertaining? Here's a situation. We just need gags from you, and that's great fun. So I just keep this sort of parallel life. Usually in the mornings I paint, in the afternoon I do the other side of it, if it's directing or doing boards or something like that.
Okay. So Joe, you want to ask the last question?
Oh, go on, Ryan. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying I know you've done some interesting work with our mutual friend Rick Rothschild on his flyover films. I'm sure that was interesting. And
yeah, that was great fun to work with. These were flyover. In other words, these were attractions in Canada where there was footage of us flying over scenery, very similar to our Soarin' attraction at Disney here, the one that my brother Alec worked on with Rick Rothschild. And we would do what we would call an overlay, so a Christmas overlay. We would drop in, let's say, Santa Claus over existing footage and choreograph these characters in some kind of storyline You have to seam it into the existing footage, and they're really a challenge. And again, I built all that, drew everything, boarded everything, and then built everything on my iPad using apps on the iPad. So I knew exactly what I needed from an animator, down to the second, pretty much, because it's a business. It's, you have to know exactly what you want. As a good director, I think you have to know exactly what you want and be able to articulate it. You can't leave it up to them. You can certainly invite input, but you have to be pretty clear to be successful, I think.
I think it's kind of been a thread through everything you've done, George. That going back to the theater, it's all about communication, being able to communicate to people a vision. And I think that's obviously, was something that was so beneficial to you that you've used now through everything you did.
Funny, all these small little things that you do end up in kind of weird ways, all kind of amounting to something when you're going to reach into another bag and go, oh yeah, wait a minute, I can do this because I knew this, I can do this. I tried to teach myself Maya. Well, that was stupid. I mean, I got a rash when I opened the application. It was just like, I don't even know where to start on this thing, but at least I made the effort, like, to at least understand what an animator has to go through. I mean, they rig it and they have to put these joints in it.
Wow.
Some kind of work, like at least I can touch it and go, okay, I understand. I can empathize with, okay.
Because chance favors the prepared.
Chance favors the prepared.
That's my favorite quote from you today, George. And
yeah,
I think any of the students that are listening today, take that to heart.
Yeah, the world belongs to the stubborn. It belongs to the dogged, not necessarily the most gifted. It's the people who just don't give up. So chance comes your way, and hopefully it comes your way, and you're reasonably prepared. And if you're not, you go for it and you learn. You're like, okay, I can do it. I don't know how, but I can do it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. So George, at the end of all of our rides and journeys and adventures, we ask the same burning eternal question. With all of your wisdom and experience in theater and film and painting and attractions, what do you think makes a guest experience timely yet timeless?
Timeless.
What about that? A lot.
Yeah.
The only way I can answer that is to tell a very brief story. And it is, I directed, like I said, Mickey's PhilharMagic. And when I would go back to Florida on other projects or visits, I would try and watch it, sit in the back and watch it with an audience. And I remember walking out once, this happened a couple of times, but once in particular, and there was a boy with his father, and he's carrying stuff, one of the Mickey, stuffed doll, maybe it was even Donald. And he looks up at his dad, he goes, "Oh, Dad, that was awesome." Man, I was like, wow, that's, who gets to do this in their lifetime? Who gets to, this kid, it was super genuine and really heartfelt. And I don't know why that one remark just stayed with me. That was 15 years ago, about 10, that we have the ability to transport you, that's our gift, that for one brief moment, we take you to a place of safety, we take a place of comfort, a place of happiness. This kid, that's the only way I can answer that, that's what we do. And hopefully I get a chance to do more of that, because who gets this chance in their lifetime to do that?
Right.
Lucky boy.
Yeah.
So that's hopefully that's a reasonably good answer. But and like that woman who bought the painting of Walt, that she'd been abused, and the painting reminded her how she felt when she went to the park. I was pretty kind of like, wow, I was pretty moved by that. Wow, this is us at our best. This is what we do best.
Yeah, definitely.
And if we can do this, great.
Yeah. Well, George, thank you so much. It's been an amazing ride through your career trajectory and life, and what an amazing talent. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. This was great fun. Loved your intro. You guys, this was not the normal intro. Awesome.
Always something fun with them.
Always something fun. Entertainment. It's all about being
all about it. That's right, George.
Where are you guys off to now?
Where should we go, Joe?
Wow.
Well, you know what? The opening of the Opera House at the
In Sydney was
Sydney
today,
today.
and I think it was
So
73. So set the controls for
yeah, let's
1973.
go to the opening. It should be
Okay.
really cool. All right. Thank you,
Okay.
George. Thank you, everybody. We'll see
You're
you
welcome.
next time.
Adios.
Adios.
Take care.
George, thank you, George. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Great fun, Jose. Adios. Feel better. Feel better.
Yes. You guys, we hope that you enjoyed the ride today. Thank you so much to our friend George Scribner for time traveling with us. And if you have questions for George, stick around for our live Q&A in just 60 seconds. On behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending an hour of your time with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. If you enjoyed the journey, please check out all 29 of our time travel adventures on our YouTube channel or under the Zoomcast section at zeitgeist-usa.com. They're also available as podcasts wherever you listen. The time machine is a little overdue for service. So we'll be taking November off and traveling to Orlando for the IAPA Expo, but please plan now to join us on December 15th when our guest will be none other than the Imagineering legend, Eddie Sato. Until then, may your tomorrow have the nostalgia of the past, the wonder of the present, and the promise of the future.
La 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 la. Get it.